Hello everyone, this is Suroj here. Welcome you all to my channel. Today we will discuss about how to send a message from an EC2 instance to SQS through a private network. See here, this is our VPC and the VPC IP address is 10.0.0.0/16. Two subnets are there, public subnet and private subnet. And within that private subnet, you see private EC2 instance is there and interface endpoint is there, right? And this private instance is sending one message to this SQS through interface endpoint, right? And if you see this SQS is outside of this VPC, not inside this VPC, right? And how I will connect to this private EC2 instance? So for that we have used one public EC2 instance, that means the EC2 instance which will be there in public subnet. Fine. See, the user will connect to this public EC2 instance through the NAT gateway, right? And then from this public EC2 instance, it will try to log into private EC2 instance. And once the user is logged into this private instance, then from this private EC2 instance, it will send the message to SQS through interface endpoint, right? Now we will implement the same in AWS console. Let's go to AWS console. Okay, now I will go to VPC. Your VPCs, I will create one. I will name it my VPC and the CIDR block is 10.0.0.0/16. Okay, that is fine. Create VPC. See, our VPC is now created. Now I will go to internet gateways. Create internet gateways. I will name this as my IGW. Fine. Create internet gateway. And I will attach this internet gateway to our VPC. My VPC, attach internet gateway. Fine. Now again I will go to your VPCs and now I will select our VPCs, that is my VPC, right? 10.0.0.0/16. Okay. I will go to action and edit VPC settings. Now you can see enable DNS resolution is already enabled, right? And now I will enable this option, that is enable DNS hostname. Okay, I have enabled it and will save this. Right now I will create two subnets, public subnet and private subnet. Fine, create subnet. I will select our VPC, that is my VPC. I will name this as public subnet. Availability zone no preference. Okay, now the id will be 10.0.0.0/17, right? You see 0.0.0.0/17, that is for public, and for private 10.0.128.0/17, that will be for private, right? Okay, add new subnet. It will be private subnet, that will be 10.0.128.0/17, right? Okay, create subnet. These two subnets are now created. Fine. Now I will see those subnets. See here, public subnet and private subnet. I'll go to route tables and we'll define the route. And see here, this is our default route table. Fine, my VPC. Okay. I will name this as public route. Okay. Public RT or public route. Okay. Public save. And now I will go to routes for that route table. Edit routes and see the destination is 10.0.0.0/16, that is the IP address of VPC. So within VPC what will be the target? That is local, that is it can communicate within this VPC. Now I will add another route, that is anywhere. Okay, it's over the network. Then the target will be the internet gateway we have created, right? My IGW, you see this is my IGW. Okay, save changes. So we will use this route table to connect to the internet, right? Or the user from the internet can connect to the VPC through this route table, right? So which subnet will be connected through this route table? That will be public subnet. Okay. Now I will go to subnet association, edit subnet association, and I will select the public subnet only. Fine. Save association. It is now associated. I will go to route table again. We'll create another route, that is public route, not public, that is private route, right? Private route table actually. And I will select our VPC, that is my VPC, create route table. Okay. And this time you see the route, the destination is only local. Okay. So for private subnet, it should be local. It should not go to the public network through internet gateway, right? So it will be like that only. So I will go to subnet association and we'll attach our private subnet. I will select private subnet here, save association. Fine. I'll go to route tables again, and this I will name this as public route table. Okay. Okay. So up to this, everything is well and good. You see, we have created the VPC, we have created these two route tables and associated these two route tables to the respective subnets, right? So this route table is associated with this public subnet and this route table is associated with this private subnet. Okay. So I will create two EC2 instances in public subnet and private subnet. I'll go to EC2, go to instances, launch instances. I will name this as public EC2, fine. And I'll select Amazon Linux 2 and instance type, okay, that is t2.micro. Key pair, I will not select any key pair for this public EC2, which will be there in public subnet, right? And okay, proceed without a key pair, t2.micro, and I will go to the network setting. And here I will choose our VPC, that is my VPC, right? And again we will choose our subnet, that will be public subnet, right? It is already there. If you see, auto assign public IP is by default disabled for this subnet, right? So for that, what we can do, we will go here in this VPC section and we'll go to subnets and we'll select our public subnet and go to action, edit subnet settings, and here I will choose enable auto assign public IPv4 address, right? So I will save this. Now if I go to EC2 instance and I refresh this public subnet, right? You see auto assign public IP is now enabled, right? So that means whenever we are going to create any instance within this subnet, right? So that time one public IP will be assigned to that instance. That's it. So it will be automatically assigned to that instance because this is enabled, right? So I'll create a security group. I will name this as public SG. Okay. So allow SSH from the internet, right? Because the users are going to connect to this instance within this public subnet, right? So that is why we will allow port 22, that is SSH from anywhere. So SSH from anywhere, right? You see this is by default 0.0.0.0/0. So I will launch this. EC2 instance is now created. I will go to instances. You see the public EC2 instance is now in pending state. I will go to launch instances again and I will create the private instance within private subnet now. Fine. So it will be private EC2, Amazon Linux 2, okay, and instance type t2.micro. And this time I will create a new key pair, right? Create new key pair. I will name this as my key. One .pem file will be generated. I will download that. I will click on create key pair and I will go to desktop and here it will download mikey.pem. Fine. I will save this and we'll go to network setting, edit. We'll choose our VPC, that is my VPC, and this time I will choose the subnet as private subnet, right? And you see for this private subnet, auto assign public IP is disabled by default, right? And that is expected. We do not want any public IP address assigned to that instance, which will be created inside private subnet. Fine. And here I will create a security group again. So I'll name this as private SG and allow SSH from public subnet only. Fine. So it will be SSH and source type will not be anywhere, it will be custom, right? So what will be the IP? 10.0.0.0/17. So this is the IP address of public subnet, right? So any instance which is there in public subnet, okay, can connect to the EC2 instance which is there in private subnet. So that is why we have choose the SSH from the public subnet network. Okay, launch instance. So I'll go to instances. If you see, private EC2 instance is in pending state and public EC2 instance is now running. Fine. I'll go to the diagram again. Now see, so public instance and private instance both are running. Now we will need to create interface endpoint and SQS. Fine. So I'll go to SQS first. Let's go to SQS. I will click on create queue and I'll choose standard. We'll name this as my SQS and everything will be as it is and we'll click on create queue. Our SQS is now created. Fine. And if I click on send and receive messages, see here, poll for messages, no messages are there, right? No message to view message in the queue, poll for message, right? So I'll go here again and we'll go to EC2 instance. See, both are now running. Fine. So what I will do now, I will connect to the public instance. So click on that, connect, connect. Okay, it is now connected, right? So I'll run sudo yum update to update all the packages. Sudo yum update -y. Now what we will do, we will try to connect to the private EC2 instance from here, from the public instance, right? You see the IP of the public EC2 instance is 10.0.37.218, right? So this is the private IP of this public EC2 instance, right? But the thing is that to connect to the private EC2 instance, we need the .pem file, right? Which is not present inside this public EC2 instance. Okay, so for that, what we need to do? We need to create one file. The name should be mikey.pem. So I will create that file. Touch mikey.pem. Fine. Now I will go to that file content. So this is our file mikey.pem. I will open that file using notepad, copy, and I will click on vi mikey to edit the content, enter, press I to go to the insert mode, and now I will paste that content, right? Now escape colon wq. Fine. Now I'll go for cat mikey to see the content. See, it is now there. Okay, so I'll change the permission to read only chmod 400 mikey.pem. Fine. So if I write ls-l to see all the files and directories, see here, this is the only file mikey.pem and the permission is read only because only R is there for that user. Okay, now using this private key or the pem file, we will try to connect to the private EC2 instance, right? So what is the command for that? So ssh-i, the name of the pem file. Now EC2-user at the rate the private IP of the private EC2 instance, right? So I will go to instances private EC2 and this is the private IP, right? I'll copy this and we'll paste here. Enter. Yes. Now see, we are now connected to the private EC2 instance, right? So that is 10.0.193.3. Let's check. See, this is the IP of the private EC2 instance 10.0.193.3, right? And there is no public IP address associated with this private EC2 instance. Okay. Now I'll check whether this EC2 instance can connect to the network or not, whether it can ping google.com or anything else which is there in public network, right? So I'll go for ping google.com. Okay, you see it's not working. Okay, so this is not connected to the outside world or the internet. So how I will send a message to SQS? Because the SQS queue is not there inside the VPC, it is outside the VPC. So to connect to that SQS, we need to go through the internet gateway, right? But our aim is to send a message to that SQS over a private network, right? So for that, what we need to do? We need to use interface endpoint. Fine. So we need to create one interface endpoint first for that SQS. So I will go to VPC. We will click on endpoints, create endpoint, and my endpoint. AWS service, I'll search for the service that is SQS, and you see the type is interface, okay, and com.amazon.aws.us east 1.sqs because we are in North Virginia region, that is US east 1, and we'll select our VPC, my VPC, and you see in availability zone US east 1D, all the instances are there, right? So I'll select this and select the subnet. In which subnet the interface endpoint should be created? It should be in private subnet, right? Because in the private subnet only, the private EC2 instance is there, which will use this interface endpoint. Fine. So I'll choose private subnet. And IP address type will be IPv4. And for security group, I need to create one security group which will be attached to that interface endpoint. Okay, so I need to create one. So for that, what we can do, we can go to VPC again. Now I will go to security group. Now I will click on create security group, and this will be endpoint SG. So allow all port. Okay, I will allow all port from the private subnet, because instance within the private subnet will use that interface endpoint, right? I'll open all the ports for that interface endpoint. Okay, and I'll select VPC. In the inbound rule, I will go for all traffic, and it will be 10.0.128.0/17. So that is the IP address range for private subnet, right? Create security group. It's now created. Now I refresh here. You see endpoint SG. Fine. So okay, everything will be as it is. Create endpoint. See here. I'll clear the filter, and if you see here, the status is still pending. Okay, so we will wait for the status to be changed from pending to available. You can see now the interface endpoint is now available. Fine. I will go to the instance now. Now I will ping google.com again to check whether it is still able to connect to the internet or not. It should not, but still we are checking. No, it's not pinging, right? So that means it is still there in the private subnet or the in the private network, right? So what I will do, I will try to send a message from that from this private EC2 instance to the SQS which is there outside the VPC, right? So I'll try to send AWS SQS send message, and it will the queue URL. What will be the queue URL? I'll copy that queue URL from here. So this is the URL for that queue. Paste, and message body. I'll name write like hello world. Okay, and I will choose the region as US East one. Fine. Okay, you see, unable to locate credentials. You can configure credentials by running AWS configure, right? So that means the EC2 instance, the private EC2 instance, does not have the permission to send any message to the SQS. So for that, what we can do? We can create one IAM role which will have the send message to SQS permission. Okay, and we'll attach that role to this EC2 instance. So I will go to IAM. I will click on roles, create role, and the role will be used by this EC2 instance. Next, and here SQS. I'll search for SQS and I will provide Amazon SQS full access. Okay, go to next, and it will be EC2 to SQS full access. Fine. Create role. The role is now created. Fine. I'll go to this private EC2 instance. It is now selected. We'll go to action, security, modify IAM role, and I will choose that role we just have created, EC2 to SQS full access. Fine. And update IAM role. Now it should have the permission, the private EC2 instance should have the permission to send a message to that SQS. Fine. So I will run the command again. So the same command. Now see what is happening. You see, still it is not able to send the message to SQS. Why? Because the SQS is there in another network. Okay, but the EC2 instance is there in the VPC network, or you can say in the private subnet. Fine. And there is no connection from the private EC2 instance to the internet. Then how it will send the message to SQS? Fine. So for that, we need to tell this EC2 instance that please use one interface endpoint which we have created in the same private subnet, and through that interface endpoint send the message to that SQS which is there in public network, right? So for that, what we can do, we just need to mention the endpoint for that interface endpoint, right? So I'll go to this endpoints. So this is my endpoint. You see, this is the private DNS name. Okay, so the endpoint URL will be like https colon slash slash then the private DNS name, right? I already have copied that command here. See, so AWS SQS send message, and this is the queue URL. See, and the message body will be any string you want to send to that SQS, right? And after that, we need to mention the endpoint URL, right? And this will be, see here, SQS dot the region name dot Amazon AWS .com, and see here it is same SQS dot region name dot Amazon AWS .com, and before that HTTPS colon slash slash would be there. So after adding this one, that is after adding https colon slash slash, it will treat as a URL, that is endpoint URL, and after that what we are doing, we are just mentioning the region, right? So I'll go to that instance again. Now see, we are now connected to the private EC2 instance, right? Now I will copy the command including the endpoint URL, copy, and I will paste here. Fine, enter, and you see this is succeed. So if the message sending is success, then only we'll get the message body and message ID, right? So I'll go to SQS now, and we'll click on send and receive messages, and you see message available is one, right? So I'll poll for messages, and this is our message ID. See, so in the last 9271, right? I'll check. See, this is 9271. Fine. And I'll check for the message. What is the message? The message should be hello world. See, the body is hello world. So this message was there in the AWS CLI command which we have passed, right? So we have successfully sent a message from the private EC2 instance to the SQS using a private network, that is interface endpoint. That's it for now today. We'll see you in the next video. If you really like this video, kindly like, share, comment and subscribe. Bye bye.